These must be our West Coast people. It's pretty late on the East. Sorry.
Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. Thank you guys for joining me so much. Kind of an odd time for our usual start. So we're doing this at 8 p.m. PST. So I know it's late on the East Coast, but I know there's probably a lot of night owls out there as well.
Yeah, you guys, this was really inspirational. It just sort of kind of hit us both, and we were a little tired, but we felt like interacting. So here we are.
Yeah, most definitely. And so, I've been dying to start delving more into this stuff because to me, most people don't understand what a wealth of information lies in the Hindu texts. And, so many people won't even just look at something that's not of their own religion, just because they won't. Unfortunately, their cup is totally full. But what is in the Hindu texts it's just this amazing wealth of information. And, Reiser was saying there, I'm all about the Sumerian stories. We hear an awful lot about that, but I don't think we hear enough about what's in the the Hindu texts, because they are a treasure trove of information. And really, if you look at it, well, then it becomes very easy to get of the opinion that we are living in a situation kind of like a multi-dimensional Star Wars that's been happening for thousands of years, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years.
And I've been fascinated with this stuff. I haven't studied it like Michael has, but every time we look at it and every time I read something, it resonates so deep. And I have a feeling I can channel these beings to a certain extent, but only to the extent that I study them. So I've just sort of kind of started on my journey studying them. They're fascinating. I love them.
Well, she was channeling them before she even knew who they were. She was just explaining to me, I'm getting this, vision of this person and describing somebody to a T. For instance, Krishna. She saw Krishna coming through, and she didn't know anything about Krishna, but personality down pat. The mannerisms, traits exactly. As I've shared with you guys, one of my favorite things to do when I was living in Florida was going to kirtans. And in the kirtans, we would do Vedic Hindu chants and songs, as mantras. And we'd also do Christian ones. We'd also do some Hebrew ones. And we incorporated them, even some Native American stuff, So it's pretty, it was very, very eclectic and inclusive. No exclusivities. So good to see you guys in the chat. Brother Keith, Brother Soul Reviver, Chris P. I knew you were going to be excited about this one. Rizar as well. Good to see everybody there. We love you guys.
We do love you guys. And this is part of the reason we all get together, because it feels so good. There's a certain energy, and I've heard it from other people that interacts when we go online. And I don't know, my heart chakra just starts going off when I start interacting with you guys. So I know we throw around a certain energy that's really, really good for the universe. And it's just fun.
It was a lot of fun. And it is a lot of fun. And it's great. And so, I'm just blown away all the time by more and more that comes out the deeper I go into this stuff. And this is just so expansive. I've read the Mahabharata, and the Bhagavad Gita is part of that. It's part of the Mahabharata. I've gone through the Ramayana. I've read pretty much all the Puranas, and I've read a good chunk of the Vedas. The Vedas can be very dry at times, so it's almost like Leviticus if you're familiar with the Old Testament. Some of it's kind of dry, some of it's really, juicy. But I've gone through all those, and I've read a lot of different sutras. Like there's the Shiva Sutras, and there's so much. And people don't understand what a wealth of knowledge there is in the Hindu texts. And just to give you guys, for instance, This is a PDF of the Ramayana. And so this is only one of the main texts in the Hindu system. And when we look at it, this is about 2,000 pages. This is the Bible. This is 2,100 pages. The entire Bible is only the size of the Ramayana. And the Ramayana is just one of the Hindu texts. Here's some of the others. We're starting at A here. You could just see how many there are. So your total amount of literature here compared to what we have in the Bible will probably end up being 100 to 1 to maybe 1,000 to 1 as far as the amount of literature that's out there, with tons of fascinating information, fascinating stuff. And, in many cases, it puts it right out there. So we've seen this some of this magnificent architecture that they have all throughout India and the greater area that we're talking about in these texts, which includes Southeast Asia to a degree as well. They're replete with so many cases of what we call Vimanas. Vimanas are flying ships. And, there's no mistaking the fact that they are flying ships because it comes right out and says it, that the gods are in their flying ships. And so they're not saying, anything in regards to what we might interpret in a traditional Christian sense as angels flying around with wings. No. The gods used vehicles. They used vehicles. They jumped in their ship and they flew off. And sometimes they flew off one after the other, shooting at each other. It's pretty cool to see this stuff.
And when you're reading them, what's really crazy, and I don't want to spoil it, but they use like modern language as far as what's going on, modern technological language. They don't try to cover it up saying, oh, these were serpents or these are wings or, no. They use real language as far as what it truly is.
Yeah, so not like a fiery serpent going through the sky necessarily. Yeah, it's a little bit easier picture to paint, and it's pretty wild. And we see, some drawings and depictions. Here's some on some rocks. There's some building structures that are done that defy explanation as well. This is a Rukma Vimana. It gets into, too, just like drawings where they're kind of giving you a technical drawing, almost like they're doing a blueprint of these flying ships. And, how do you view this as anything but somebody in a flying ship? I don't know. How else can you take that? I mean, how else can you take that, Cindy?
Oh, okay, I can't. But here's one excuse I did hear. I heard that someone said there was a building with ancient writing on it and that the architects made a mistake, so they wrote over it, and it just happened to make patterns that look like airplanes and tanks and stuff like that. The most ridiculous thing I ever heard. But this is how they treat us, like we're idiots. They think we'll buy anything. Anything just to keep us away from the true history. And I really, really want to find out our history, because once I find out where I've been, I can then know more of how to get where I'm going. When I learn my abilities and I learn what I'm made of and a lot of things, they spend a lot of time beating us down and treating us like we're stupid.
Well, most definitely. But then when we see how the system tries to keep us locked into a very, very narrow point of view. And unfortunately, it is very unfortunate and sad, but this is the case. I see planetary protectors in the house. Kimmy, good to see you. It's really pretty amazing when we look at some of these depictions. And again, to me, there's no way of mistaking that for anything but somebody in a vehicle. That's a vehicle. And even though it's a couple thousand years old, hey, somebody was driving vehicles in those days a couple thousand years ago. It wasn't a horse and buggy, and this is way before the horse and buggy time for, maybe a chariot, we could say. And here's some more depictions of these flying things. And coincidentally, this type of centrifugal system, which some have even interpreted that it even talks about it using mercury, kind of like the Nazi bell. Is that just another coincidence? I think that, yeah, this is pretty obvious. And hey, Nathan C., good to see you. Good to see Monique as well. Yeah, they erase it in these times. It's definitely the case. Again, these are pretty obvious depictions of vehicles as we see them time and time again in many different places, and even in the buildings. Some of the buildings that they built are supposed to be replicas of what came down from the sky and landed. And interestingly enough, if we're looking at this photo over here, some have thought that perhaps even pyramids have actually landed from the sky. And this is, if you squared this off, it's another pyramidal shape in a way. Most definitely, when you listen to the stories and the battles going on amongst the gods and the devas and the asuras. So the devas are the good guys. So that's like your ones that you're probably pretty familiar with, like your Krishna, Rama, Sita, Radhe, Hanuman. These are all devas. Now Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma are on like a higher level, and they actually take incarnations, like we were talking about Vishnu incarnating as Rama, and then after that incarnated as Krishna, and is thought to be incarnating next as Kalki, and perhaps he's already here walking amongst us right now.
Yeah, it's really curious how, the Vedas and these ancient texts have everything so different from the Bible, and how they point things out as they are. And I really wish that we had these to study in school. I think if there's any books we should be reading, it should be these. There's a lot of truth, and there's a lot of wisdom, and there's a lot of knowledge that we could really gather and glean from these and become better human beings.
Yeah, it's just amazing. The more I've gotten into this over the years, the more it's just blown my mind. And so you see Gurkha flying in a swift and powerful Vimana, hurled against the three cities of Rishis and Anhakas, a single projectile charged with all the power of the universe. Of course, they get a little grandiose with those things. An incandescent column of smoke and fire as brilliant as 10,000 suns rose in its splendor. That's out of the Mahabharata. So that does sound kind of like a nuclear explosion, don't you think? It really does, like shooting off. And there you have a blast that, how else would you describe a nuclear explosion? Maybe it does look like the radiance of 10,000 suns. And, when we've gone through the West over here, it really looks like there might have been mega battles out here. That would explain a lot. It really would explain a lot. If the culture that was out here in the American West and Southwest, the deserts that we see, perhaps they're the way they are because they were all torched and lit up in some big, huge battle. We've been thinking cataclysm, right? We've been thinking, well, maybe it was, that solar flash, the nova that's supposed to be coming by 2027, 2024, or 2046, if you listen to Diehold. Perhaps, but perhaps it was actually a war of sorts. It's pretty interesting to think about it. And, there's so much to these stories. And again, so many flying vehicles everywhere we look. Flying vehicles in the sky as these battles are going on. It's interesting that some of the main Hindu gods, Rama is green-skinned and Krishna is blue-skinned. Interesting, interdimensional war as well. Yes, most definitely. Osboy, good to see you, my friend. Yeah, just look at Mars, as Frost says. Mars, good example. Perhaps, the wars were there. And, in the Sumerian texts, the Gigi or the Gigi were there and, came to Earth later on, and then were the ones that said, hell no, we won't work anymore. And so supposedly the Anunnaki, created Homo sapiens sapiens, probably out of Homo erectus or Homo habilis. And, is this, even though it's an interdimensional war, it appears, according to the stories here, according to these books, it was very real, very physical for Earth humans could see these beings. And these beings had way higher technology than we do. And some were extremely benevolent, like Rama and Krishna, just for example. Extremely benevolent beings, not using humans as slave labor, So it's hit me too. The more I've gone deeper and deeper into this, I don't feel that these Hindu gods are the same as the Anunnaki that we hear of, creating mankind to be a slave. I don't get that impression at all.
No, and when you tell me that, I get these huge chills all up and down my body, and that's indication of confirmation for what you say being true. And I believe that these energies run through you really strong, because I've seen the Krishna energy like poke its head out of you. And when we're doing mantras, we're sitting together meditating or whatever, I've seen Krishna, and I didn't know who he was before, but I explained him as a a ham, and he's a total ham. He's very playful. And even tonight when we were doing mantras, the two children that I kept seeing, running in circles, the internal child, he's supposed to be a lot of fun. So I think we're supposed to be teaching more about these guys. I think it's time. We definitely these guys are certainly ready.
So one of the authors that really woke me up the most was Richard L. Thompson. So he's written several books on science and philosophy, and he has a PhD in mathematics from Cornell. And he also is an extremely knowledgeable scholar on Vedic society. And so, this is out of one of his books, and it talks about the Vedic society. So in the Vedic society, it was understood that to travel to other worlds is possible. It's very possible, and it's done all the time. This could involve travel to other star systems, travel into higher dimensions, or traveling into higher dimensional regions in another star system. All of that's possible. It's also understood that it's possible to leave the material universe altogether and to travel through a graded arrangement of transcendental realms. So that is a huge statement. Not only that, everything that we are uncovering here scientifically is all part of the system and the Vedic worldview. And so before Buddha, because Buddhism comes out of Hinduism, before Buddha came here, he had taken an incarnation in on a totally different planet in a totally different star system. And supposedly he heard the wails and cries of people suffering on Earth. So he left that life. He voluntarily laid down that life there in that physical body in order to be born over here to help bring us the Dharma and to help bring humanity back to an understanding of how things really are. Because what happens is these malevolent beings, these beings that are only out for themselves and are here basically just using us as a resource and a food source, as well at times. They give us false ideologies, a false view of the world and reality, and they end up, having us be in eternal wars against each other, killing each other, and it's just a nasty, nasty situation. So some of these benevolent beings will incarnate and try to rectify this situation. And apparently, sometimes, they will actually even lead the war against the dark beings, against these beings these dark masters, as Chris is saying, that have ruled our reality and our world for thousands of years.
And it takes me back to as above, so below, like here in this 3D reality, in this third dense 3D reality, we have what we might call the higher ups or the powers that be. And I don't like to call them elites, but, those that have a lot more than we do, consider they're the higher ups. And And then there's us, and I think the same thing goes on, in the higher realms where there's like higher entities controlling lower entities, but ultimately the entities like us who are full of love, we will win. I mean, ultimately we do come back to source. And I think our technology, which is, heart-centered love, and I do believe love's a technology, it will override. There's an override. And I think we're going to be fine. We're going to make it. We just have to find the truth.
So in the Puranas, which are fascinating to read, those are some of the most delicious ones to read as far as, stories that really get you thinking. They speak of over 400,000 human-like races of beings living on various planets in our galaxy. 400,000 different types. That's a lot. Almost 500,000 different types of humanoids. And it also talks of over 8 million other life forms, including plants and different animals. Out of the 400,000 humanoid types of life in the galaxy, human beings, as we know ourselves, are actually among the least powerful and the least advanced. So, compared to the other races out there. So most of the other races are older than us. They're, more knowledgeable. They have more technology, and they understand the way the universe works. So many of them are able to manipulate their physical bodies and change dimension at will.
Yeah, but I also think that we are multi-dimensional beings, and we can do it too. It's just a matter of finding the right information and the right technology, if you want to call it that. I do believe the heart is a technology. It's a certain vibration, and it's really strong, and it does heal. And I think it's tapping into that information stream that can help us become more useful. I don't know quite the right vocabulary word for that, but we can do more. We are multidimensional. We are strong.
So Annabelle says, how do we know this? Well, this is knowledge, and there is a lot of knowledge in there that could only be passed on by sources coming here from somewhere else. Sources that are definitely more advanced and have greater knowledge. So they actually understood the shape of the Milky Way galaxy. They understood that it kind of looks like a fried egg, so to speak, as far as the actual shape. And they actually described the distance of it very accurately. So how did they know it? There's no way they knew it, from what we have as far as knowledge, unless we got it from somebody that had higher knowledge. Now, was that ancient civilizations that were here on Earth, that have long since been destroyed, and they had a lot more knowledge, a lot more ability, perhaps were even able to travel off planet, perhaps, or was it extraterrestrials, interdimensionals that came and gave us the knowledge? Seems like that would be the likely situation. But again, it's up to each to do their own investigations and see what feels right. It's interesting, too, because there's so many different races that are described in there. And some of them, are pretty pleasing to look at, like the Gandharvas and the Siddhas. They're said to have very beautiful human forms. Others are said to be extremely ugly, frightening, or deformed in appearance as well, like the Kimpurusas. And the word literally means, is it human? So many of the Vedic humanoid races are said to naturally possess certain powers called siddhis or shis. Now, this is what you gain when your kundalini rises. You start to gain some of these powers. So these beings are people, they're beings that are just born with a risen kundalini. They're at a different level than we have been. But, many of us are rising up through the levels again.
Well, it makes me wonder, with all the cosmic rays and everything that's going on, if that is making some of our kundalini rise. And since we haven't been informed of what's going to happen when that happens, a lot of people are getting caught up in the medical system and thinking that they have something wrong with them that a pill can fix, when in actuality it's something very natural. It's a natural process because of evolution. Could that be?
Yeah. And so being able to read each other's thoughts and communicate mentally, these are just standard abilities with these other races. And some don't use speech at all, although some do. Many could hear at great distances. They have the ability to levitate or anti-gravity. They have the power to change the size of objects or living bodies without disrupting their structure. Hanuman, who is depicted as kind of almost like a Bigfoot type creature, humanoid monkey basically. He's able to just go from being a normal human size to being gigantic at will. And so that's another one of those abilities. So maybe that explains some of the giants as well. It could be some of these beings. Not only could they manipulate their bodies dimensionally, but they could actually change the size of them at will.
I think they can too, and I haven't found it yet in Emerald tablets, but it does talk about how the vibration on Earth can keep certain people undisturbed, or it can keep them from being discovered. And I do believe when that vibration changes, there's going to be certain entities that can no longer hide themselves. I do believe that.
Yes, definitely. Now, some of them also have the ability to become invisible. They could also create illusions so that you think you're looking at them, but you're not. You're just seeing kind of a hologram. They can also have the ability to enter another person's body and control it. So basically possession. Mm-hmm. And that goes directly in there. They can also move objects, with just the mind, as well as time travel. So it's pretty fascinating to see. And now many of these humanoid races are said to live in parallel or higher dimensional realms, even within the Earth, on its surface as well, and in its immediate vicinity. And also some are supposed to live inside the Earth. So in the Ramayana, Rama, who is the incarnation of Vishnu, he was living in an inner Earth society. And then he came out on top of the Earth because of the asuras, or the devils, the demons, that were creating havoc.
Yeah, so this is the stuff that really fascinates me. This is the stuff that I like to study, that I like to read, because it rings so true to my heart. And that makes me want to delve into it. When something rings true to my heart, usually I kind of lock on, I sink the claws in, and I don't give it up. And, you've introduced me to this and turned me on to this for, quite a while now. Started with the mantras, but we build up more and more and more. So every time I hear this stuff, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is definitely fascinating. So in the Ramayana, it's a very it's a great story basically. The basic setting of the Ramayana, which tells of how Lord Ramachandra rescued his wife Sita from the kingdom of Lanka, to which she had been taken by a Rakshasa, which is a demon, basically. But the demon looks like a human, but he's just nasty, as you would expect a demon to be. And that his name was Ravana. And the Rakshasas are one of the 400,000 humanoid races, and they were ruling Lanka at that time. And some people think that's Sri Lanka, the island off of Africa there. So what do we have? We have different beings ruling different parts of the earth. And really it's not like, one of the things that got me thinking was re-going through this story, because, that is an area, of course, Africa and up into Babylon, Sumeria, that was controlled by the Anunnaki forces. So, were these groups concurrent? And were they at war with each other? It appears that there was definitely that going on. Some of these beings live, thousands of years. It's interesting too, because in the Vedic books it says that early human beings had a much longer lifespan, thousands of years ago than now. For example, prior to about 5,000 years ago, the human lifespan is said to have been about 1,000 years. So now that's getting biblical in a way, because we hear of Methuselah, we hear of all that living 969 years, right? Methuselah lived 969 years. Well, this is verifying that. This is saying, yeah, humans did actually live that long. And typical lives of humanoid beings living outside this earth realm are in the order of about 10,000 years average. And there are beings called devas who are administrators of the universe and who live for hundreds of millions of years as well. And people in India still report encounters with humanoids of the classic Vedic types as well.
So I think I remember it was one time I felt like I had like a transmission come in, and it really felt like it was the devas that do help hold the karma on the planet. Now, I don't know for a fact if that's true or not, but it does seem like these beings could do just that, I would think. What do you think about that?
Yeah. So, that's where, like, when we're talking about Shiva and Vishnu, for instance, or Lakshmi, we're talking about much higher beings. So these are beings that operate on a much higher dimension, and then they will, at times, create a physical body to go inhabit, to kind of rectify things that are falling apart down here because of the demonic influence. So, there's a lot of different types of beings, and so there was a couple of comments about angels and demons both giving birth with humans. It's right there in that story, and that's what Ravana wanted. He wanted Sita. He wanted Sita to be his wife, and he wanted to have sex with her and have kids. So another humanoid species gets close enough DNA to make it happen, and it's fascinating to see all this stuff. And most definitely, there's some nasty beings as well as some of the benevolent ones. And so I got PDFs for you guys, so you can check out that as well. So some shocking science and Hindu mythology. Were the ancients more advanced? To me, I think, without a doubt.
Well, yeah, because, they're trying to paint us right now as the pinnacle of modern technology. But clearly, there's more technology. It's almost like, I can see how we fell and we're on the climb back up. And as we read these ancient texts, we're running into things that have obviously been here for eons and eons and eons. Like they say, there is nothing new under the sun.
And, before we go much further, I just wanted to thank you guys for your support. And I know, we get super chats here and there, and we appreciate it, but we'd much prefer if you are so inclined, to do it through Ko-Fi or become a Patreon, just because, like, many of you guys might have been on a couple of chats ago, where we had some very, very generous people, and the channel's only seen about 10% of what was given by people out there. Only 10%. So that's kind of shocking, but that's the way things are in this time. So if anybody is so inclined, then please use Ko-Fi and Patreon, because they are definitely more user friendly for us. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're the last time out, they took 90%, and I could not get an answer on that. So yeah, it's just part of what we're going through right here. So yeah, I do think that we've had way more advanced civilizations, but maybe they weren't even in ours. Maybe they, there is so much evidence to the fact that there were more than just Homo sapiens sapiens living on the planet with other beings at the same time. And, if you look back and you go back 25,000 years ago, well, if you squeeze it back to about 40, well, if we go 25,000, you got 3 different types of humans living concurrently. Homo sapiens sapiens, you have the Denisovans, and you have the Neanderthals. And then if we go back a little bit farther, we have that little hobbit creature that was around at the same time too. So, I mean, there was, at that point in time, you're looking at like 4 different humanoid species living on the planet that were all distinct. And then whether we're talking Native American Indians with the Hopi, whether we're talking in Africa, with the Zulus, Sumeria, the Greek myths, these myths are more than myths. There were other beings living with us. There were more advanced beings that were here right with us out in the open, without a doubt.
And I think you can go back as early as the Native Americans and how they, they didn't use machinery. They didn't have debt. They didn't take advantage of other people, yet they knew how to do certain things. They knew that trees could talk to each other. They knew about the ether. They knew if you saw this animal or that animal, you could, it was a certain sign. To me, these things are technologies. They had very strong emotions, and I do think they used them to heal and manipulate the weather. And to me, that's a form of technology. And to me, it's far greater than what we have here and now today.
Yeah, I agree totally. So the Asuras, here we go, are a class of, well, they call them divine beings or higher powers. They're not really so nice. So they are related in a sense, but they might not be any more related than we are to them, to the Devas. Now, the Devas, and there's different levels. There's like when we say Mahadeva, that means like great God, so to speak. And again, our words have gotten so screwed up, because here we talk about God and the gods. And see, in Hinduism, even the devas are not thought to be source, and that's the thing. These are all beings. These are all entities. They're all individuals, all of them, even the great ones, even the Mahadevas. So they're known that none of them are source, but everybody has source within them. That's the thing. So the Asuras are constantly battling with the Devas. The Asuras are described in Indian texts as powerful superhuman demigods with good or bad qualities. What's interesting too is they could change. They could be an Asura and then switch and vice versa. So it's kind of like things are not set in stone. And somebody had made that quote that, energy, you can't be created or destroyed. It only changes form. And you can karmically go up or karmically go down as well.
I think that's another level of information they keep from us as far as karmically going up or down. Now, I've heard about how they do try to keep our souls enslaved. So we just keep being reborn, and used and used and used. What do you think about that?
Soul traps. Well, I shared with you my experience with my past father-in-law, and he was tortured and was gravely injured in war and killed people in war, and it really tarnished his soul. And so he had a lot of mental problems. He was on all sorts of horrible opiates and lithium, and he ended up dying early, and he died actually at my age right now. And it was a horrible death. And then when the Catholic priest was in there giving last rites, and I'm very sensitive to energies. I've always been. I've always seen things. I mean, I've seen entities. I've felt entities, all different types, all my life, probably hundreds of times. The energy I got was just like a soul trap. Honestly, it felt like he was going kicking and screaming, leaving his body and being grabbed by something and pushed in a direction he didn't want to go. And so it really felt, that was it for me in the Catholic Church. And that was when I was like 21, because it just felt evil to me, and I don't want to offend anybody, but it was, every individual is different, and so I had another uncle go that was also Catholic. I didn't feel that, so it could be part of his torture from going through the horrors of war as well, but it just was coinciding when the priest was giving last rites, and it just felt like his soul was being trapped and put back into the meat grinder, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think there's a way we can raise our vibration so it doesn't get trapped and recycled through, if that's in fact true. But if they do use our energy as loosh, like I believe that they do, because I can see how, energy can be used to feed more energy. We would want to learn how to raise our vibration. And it's almost like, it feels like that's one of the bigger pictures they're trying to keep from us. They're trying to keep us from raising our vibration. I don't know what you think about that.
Absolutely. That's why the push is on right now, because we're going through ascension, because we're having all the cosmic rays come in, which is changing our consciousness. And, as we know, it's way more effective now to do energy healing than it was just a little while ago. And everybody is getting more psychic. You're getting more intuitive. It's just part of what's happening. So they know that, so they're trying to counteract it as much as possible.
Yeah, and I guess that's why the censorship is coming through, because they knew we would get to this point where all the information would be passed back and forth really quick, and we would eventually learn these things. And it's not too many of us just yet who really grab onto it and believe it, but we do here. All of us in this room, we get it, we understand it, we believe it, and I think this is really important. I wish it were taught in schools.
So it's great stuff. Strange narrations in the Mahabharata. There are certain narrations in the Mahabharata that defy any rational explanation. Some examples are explanations about flying vehicles, Vimanas. Arjuna is the hero in the Mahabharata. And the Mahabharata is all about Krishna, who is the incarnation of Vishnu, telling Arjuna he's got to do his duty as much as he hates it, because there's a bigger battle going on here. And he can't quite see the bigger picture right now because he's in the flesh and human, and he's limited in seeing the bigger picture. So Krishna explains to him the bigger picture and gets him to understand. But anyway, Arjuna travels in a flying chariot across the Himalayas. His visit of the Deva territories, right? Deva territories as opposed to Asura territories. So one of the Asura territories was down in Africa. And so the Deva territory was perhaps in Tibet, most definitely in the Himalayas. Interesting as well, Tibet is when you get up into the Himalayas there, that's the entrance into Agartha, into Shangri-La, into Shambhala, these beautiful inner earth cities filled with benevolent beings of a very high type. So it also explains his battle with the Nevada Kavchas, which is men in spacesuits, perhaps. It sounds like it. Salwa's attack on the city of Dwarka and a flying city named Sabha. So an actual flying city. Think about the book of Revelation, New Jerusalem coming out of the sky, a whole city coming out of the sky. Well, here you have it, a flying city. The same thing. And the triple space cities of the Asuras, these are actual cities. These are not even they're biggest motherships you can imagine. So the triple space cities of the Asuras that revolved around the Earth in 3 circular orbits that were destroyed by Shiva using a single projectile weapon, and many more. Pretty interesting stuff, no?
It is awesome stuff, and I just have to point out what Kimmy says here. She says, Michael, you pronounce those hard names perfectly. Thank you, Kimmy. He did, didn't he? And poor Michael got so much crap for saying Spokane. But you give him these 15 syllable words, and he's got it. He really does. So, yeah, thanks, Kimmy.
And so, as we said, too, it definitely looks like nuclear war that goes on as well in the Mahabharata when they describe what happens. And then, we found telltale signs of the green glass and many radioactive samples in a lot of excavations where these wars were supposed to happen. And, the Sinai Peninsula as well was supposed to be a site of another nuclear war. So, it really all seems to go together. In the Mahabharata, the total death toll amounts to about 1.6 billion in a matter of 18 days because of the warfare that went on. Vast numbers of people. And if we look at modern science, they wouldn't tell you there was 1.6 billion people on the earth, maybe 3000 BC.
Oh, no, absolutely not. They're not going to tell us that, for quite a while. Eventually, I think part of disclosure is that they do have to tell us before we actually find out with our own eyes.
Most definitely. I mean, this is just amazing, and it's too bad that most people aren't aware of this and just don't know, the whole story. It's fascinating stuff. So we're looking at cloning. How about cloning? Because that's something else that's kind of mentioned, where they basically created a new body from a dead body. So there you have cloning. We have nuclear war. We have, spaceships fighting each other. We have cities coming down out of the sky, giant motherships in orbit around the Earth. Hello, can we wake up?
I know. Does it have to be any more clear? And, it just makes sense to me why, I don't want to offend anyone or their special belief either. But when I was going to my local church here, it's like anything outside of the Bible, if you read anything or believed anything outside of this particular Bible, you were deemed evil, or there was something wrong with you, or you were sinning because you weren't just, taking faith as faith. And I think that's all to keep us locked in a certain belief system in fear, to keep us from the real truth.
And so, you have a lot of situations where it looks like obvious cloning. You have another case over here where a group called the now I'm going to screw it up, Kimmy. Thank you so much. Kauravas were created by splitting a single embryo into 100 parts and growing each part in a separate container. Test tubes, hello, it's this lab work going on. The Sumerian stories kind of give you the same picture as well. The more I have looked into it, the more I feel that the devas, the good guys, such as the Hindu gods here, were at war with the ones that we view as perhaps the Anunnaki. And, what happened? That's a good question. What exactly happened? Because we don't see them all out in the open anymore. But, I really do think that there are inner Earth civilizations. And I really don't, I do think that not everybody left, and perhaps some are on their way back at this moment.
Yeah, and this is like nanotechnology. So like who, I guess so it hasn't really left. We're still being affected by it. But this is what I mean, how they really don't mince words in this. It's just true. What they say is true, and it's real. And, they don't try to cover it up or make it seem like something different. It is what it is.
And we see the Romans using nanotechnology. How long has nanotechnology been around? It's pretty wild. We're just rediscovering stuff. Cases of embryo transfer, and implantation. We know there's all sorts of genetic experimentations going on. That is a given. That's what we've been, we've gotten through so many of the abduction phenomenon. Good to see Brother Indigo in there, and Vereen, and 619 as well. Well, Earth, right? Ea. So, Enki, before he became Lord of the Earth, which is what Enki means, was Ea or Ea, and Earth, right? E-A-R-T-H. And interesting, too, because when you do it phonetically, if you do E-A and you add a O, then you get the demiurge, E-A-O. Interesting stuff.
That's another thing I've been wanting to get into a little bit is the demiurge. So I'm sure we're going to be doing a show on that pretty soon. But I've really been feeling like this is information that they want us to help spread. And I know we have the right audience for it here. And I think it's just really important stuff. It's fascinating. It's important. It's what we should have been taught from the start, in my humble opinion. If I ever do homeschooling again, I'll definitely add this information too, because it certainly made my life a lot easier to understand.
So some of the structures were actually made by the gods or by the devas. And again, it's too bad that we got to use these words because, gods and gods, because it's, I think, confuse things. But, if we're talking about the devas, there are some structures that were made, and Ram Setu is one of them. It's basically accredited to Rama, building it as well. And obviously, some of these ancient structures defy explanation. If you looked at the ones down in South America that are so perfectly fitted together that you can't even get a single card into a seam. And, how could we can't even duplicate that now. So obviously, it's people with higher technology that are choosing to use natural things instead of something like what we would manufacture now. They talk about organ transplants as well in several different areas, and they had some sort of TV or monitoring system where they could see what was happening on the battlefield from within their Vimanas and far, far, far away. So obviously, also time travel. So, there's cases where it talks about time travel. And of course, if they have mastered the ability to shift in between dimensions at will by changing their own vibratory rate, time travel might not be so hard.
No, I don't think it is. I think once we do understand and learn and where we get more and more of this information, we will be able to change our vibratory rate and we will ascend and things will be a lot easier. They'll be a lot different.
And they understood Akash. We could look at that as the life force and also the Akashic records. That everything that is done is right there. So Rama goes to Vaikuntha. And Vaikuntha, you could view as a heaven. But it's interesting, after he is done with his worldly reign here, and he was a wonderful, benevolent ruler, and just the epitome of exactly what you would want out of somebody that was ruling. And it's fascinating, the descriptions, because in Vaikuntha, and also it just says in the Vaikuntha planets, the inhabitants fly in their airplanes, accompanied by their wives and consorts, and eternally sing of the character and activities of the Lord. So, it's just fascinating, though, that they know that it's a planet and that they talk about people, going and flying about in their flying ships just so clearly.
It seems like our current political system could learn a few things from these people. It would be nice, if they read these books too. Actually, they probably have read these books and they have access to more information, and that's why they're higher up, and they know how things work a little bit better, but it doesn't make it right. What they're doing doesn't make it right, and I couldn't be in the political system as it is right now because I have to look at myself in the mirror every day. But these people do seem like amazing and incredible and benevolent, and we could learn a lot from them. I love to study them.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It really is, and it's just right out there. That's the thing. It's kind of stated very, very plainly. So it's a beautiful thing. And so again, this is just saying, like, why did Vishnu come incarnation of Lord Rama? And it goes into some detail on why. And it really, what it breaks down to is that there is this kind of eternal battle that's going on. Because these beings have fought before, and I wanted to show you guys this. Look at the size of this giant. Do you see this? Now that's Hanuman, who can become, if he wants, like 60 feet tall at will. Look at the size of this guy, just chowing down on people. We've been talking about mud fossils, and I did another video. I was debating whether I put it up or not, just because when we were out in the field, so to speak, the other day, we heard some weird stuff, and it was either some sort of ship up in the sky. My feeling is it was coming from under the ground. That was my gut, and it felt like it felt like a thumping machine. It started to make me think of Tremors, with the giant worms. It's crazy stuff. But anyway, it was in that same area as that one big, what we think was a mud fossil. Very weird energy over there too. We saw a lot of curious rocks and formations.
We did, and it was a type of thudding that didn't have any real rhythm to it. It was like a big giant piece of equipment that somehow got stopped or was just shut down, and then it went chunk 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 chunk, like it just died. It was so strange, but that happened a few different times out there. It was so weird.
Most definitely. Yeah, it was really unusual. Very strange stuff. So Vaikuntha is the celestial home of Vishnu. And it's said to be located in the direction of the Capricorn constellation. So it actually tells you a location as well. And it's pretty fascinating stuff to look at. And, it's got to be a higher vibrational place because only more perfected beings can go there. So this got Cindy's attention. Robotics and AI mentioned in the Yoga Vasista. And so this is the inner journey of Lord Rama in the story of the Ramayana. And it's interesting because it talks about the possible use of AI in the earlier days of the Hindu civilization. Pretty amazing stuff. I mean, it's all there. It kind of tells you what's going on. So if we look at this and take it for what it is, then there has been a long ongoing battle between what we would call benevolent and malevolent forces. This battle extends here on Earth, and it extends way off Earth. It extends into other dimensions. And it's been ongoing for thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of years. And everything that we talk about in terms of an extremely modern society is in it. We have cloning going on. We have AI going on. We have all sorts of flying machines. We have nuclear bombs going off. It's just amazing.
Now, Rizar says maybe AI is a part of Source. I don't know, that's kind of scary, but there's been lots of movies out there where they do kind of point to that.
Yeah, I mean, look at The Matrix.
Yeah, The Matrix, that one got me. That one really got me. And so did, what was that movie called? I Am Mother. I Am Mother. And it turned out to be AI in the end. So I don't know. That's could very well be.
Yeah, I mean, that movie, I Am Mother, if you guys didn't see it, it's a Netflix movie. It was actually pretty damn good. It's about this girl who is growing up believing that she's the only human on the planet. The only human on the planet, that the world's been destroyed. She was, basically saved in a test tube to be incubated at the proper time. There's thousands of other humans in test tubes, embryos. Just sitting in a state of, suspended animation, so to speak. And this robot, basically brings her up, educates her, and it's just fascinating. And, she's brought up thinking it's her mother, so to speak. She understands that she's not human. But, the robot told her, that, you're going to replenish the earth. When the time is right, we're going to wake up some of other humans, and let them evolve. But as it turns out, not the case. And in fact, the robot and all the robots, because it turns out that there's tons of them, they're going about exterminating humans, really. And there's other humans out there that they're still exterminating. So it's another case of AI taking over.
Yeah, Chris P says, I can't believe you haven't seen The Matrix. No, I didn't. So I didn't get out very much until Michael met me. And then here I am. And now I'm watching all kinds of movies, studying all kinds of stuff, and living life. And that's another part of it. It's important that we get out there, live our lives, live our purpose, and do the right thing. Be nice people and be good to each other and help raise our vibration, together. It's really, really important. So, and you guys are just really super awesome, and I love you so much.
And I will second that. And so Earth Human says 12 strands of DNA, 12 major chakras. Yeah, that's where we're heading. We're changing, we're evolving, and that's part of the story. So that's also part of, what we see throughout the scripture here, the Hindu scripture, is, basically the main theme is the fact that every individual has prime creator source God in them. And basically we are source exploring its own creation in an infinite number of different life forms. All of us, even all the extraterrestrials, all the interdimensionals, the devas, the asuras, the demons, the angels, everything. It's all, basically a different aspect of source. So it's pretty interesting to look at that and understand the bigger picture. But ultimately, it's about returning to source, and that journey might take an awful long time if we, follow these scriptures. It could take millions of incarnations even. But it also may only take one if you completely become self-realized and enlightened, and then you could just basically jump straight up into the much higher dimensions. But that takes letting go of things like judgmentalism, jealousies, insecurities, the need for revenge, the need to slap back when somebody hits you. We've been given the how-to, and so Christ and Krishna and Buddha and so many others have given us the how-to. But it's easier said than done for most.
It is. And, it's just following simple little things like, when in doubt, be kind. And just being nice. And if you don't know what to do, just do the next right thing. And you keep following those little steps. And I do believe we can ascend quite quickly. And a lot of these people that we're studying now, I don't know, do you think they lived lifetimes, or do you think most of them were just kind of one and done and went up?
Well, they all live lifetimes to get to a certain state. So it's a part of soul evolution. So the soul evolves, and so you have, a being like Vishnu who could drop down and incarnate and pull others up. And then, of course, when you do exemplary acts of service and, show that loving kindness and compassion, you could jump up yourself in dimension. But to get to that point, they see the line of thought is everything starts out at a very rudimentary level. Like we were talking before about elemental beings that have consciousness there, but they don't really have the type of intellect that we do. And we could see, animals, as well, plants, they all have consciousness, they all have feelings, but it evolves over time. And so life tends to evolve to become a little bit more complicated, so to speak, and multifaceted. And so like for humans, the next step would be the Davic realm, or we could look at it as like the legend of Enoch and Elijah becoming Metatron and Sandalphon.
And Joffrey asks here, where do you draw the line from turn the other cheek and protecting yourself?
Yeah, that's a fine line. It's a seriously fine line. And, the way I view it, like, just because you guys are a family, I've had a lot of run-ins with my sister, and she won't watch this, so. And she's very much in the system, and she's very much somebody that's quote-unquote successful, where I'm not as quote-unquote successful if you're looking at like bank accounts and material things, but they're not high on my list. However, she's lashed out at me recently, really pretty nasty. I mean, really nasty, even name calling. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, I won't go there. So I'm not going to name call. She could name call as much as she wants, but I won't. So that same situation. And I had somebody that I knew if I wanted to defend myself against them, I could have hurt them. Mm-hmm. But, they slapped me, and I let them slap me, and they did punch and scratch, but I didn't strike back because I know I could have hurt them, and I don't want to. And as long as I'm not in serious danger, I wouldn't. But, if it was a case of somebody hitting you, yeah, I would break their arm.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe you would. And, I guess the same goes for me. Where is that line drawn? It goes, for my personal protection and my pets and my children and someone who might not be able to defend themselves. That's where I would draw the line there.
Exactly. As Amethyst says, self-defense, in going way back, I had a couple instances. When I was a teenager, I had a little bit more of a temper. I wasn't so patient, and a couple of times had some fights and hurt people. broke ribs, knocked people out, and I just felt horrible after that. I just felt horrible, and I'm talking more like 17, 18, 19 years old. And even just that was hard to live with myself. So like if a war started, I would have to be a conscientious objector, because killing somebody would be just so damaging to your soul. I just wouldn't want to go there. But if somebody came in and was starting to shoot, then of course you would have to defend yourself.
You would, and they put our soldiers in such horrible predicaments, and it causes a lot of PTSD. And, as I'm learning myself while I walk through this stuff that I've gone through and my traumas and PTSD, that's something that actually causes a bit of damage to the brain. And if you don't know much about it, you don't know how to fix it, you don't know what to do. And one thing I saw today was a little disturbing about how, AI robots may be replacing soldiers pretty soon, because if a human soldier decides to not follow orders and put the gun down, I think that's where our consciousness is headed. And they sort of kind of know this, and they're about to put AI up in the front of that. So they're going to, because they know our soldiers might get to the point where they won't follow orders.
So, there's just a little bit of an argument going on in there with somebody telling somebody else they're going to go to hell. That's definitely not Christ-like, at all. So that's the thing. And a lot of people stir things up just because they want to. And they really just want the conflict. That's part of what's going on. You're welcome, Julie. People do. A lot of people are just miserable on the inside. And so they just need to stir conflict. And, sometimes it's them. And sometimes, honestly, we can be overruled, as we were just talking about that list of powers. Sometimes beings will jump into somebody that's a little bit weakened. And, when I've had people in my life that abused pharmaceuticals, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not big on pharmaceuticals, because they can become extremely addictive and turn people into monsters, from basically the use of them in many cases. And it's sad because they could change and then get pretty miserable and just want to, destroy everything around them. It's just so nasty, really.
It is nasty. And, this is not always demonic possession. I do believe lower energies, lower frequencies can cause people to lash out and behave in a way that is really yucky. And that's why I think raising our vibration to get up and above those lower frequencies is really important. You're a happier person. You just play nice. You hold your judgment if it's not your place, and that's where we all need to be. And that's why I love this chat room so much, because you guys are the higher frequency. And I do feel that in my heart chakra. And, I do send it back out to you guys. So, it's a strengthening of the force when we're doing this.
Stack says, there's a destroyer around our sun. How do we survive? I think the biggest thing is not really surviving. I think it's more about how do we live. It's all about how we're going to choose to act in these times. And being fear-based would not be a very good thing to do, at all. So if I personally believe that, this is just my feeling, my take on it, is that basically, again, we're consciousness. In a sense, we're eternal, so there's really no fear. We're going to pass into a different dimension in some way, shape, or form, whether it's just dropping the body, and we're out of the physical body, back on the other side, or ascension, going up through the higher realms. Either way, it's nothing to fear, because, we're still going to have our consciousness. And I personally, I agree with Buddha in that Buddha said the only hell that exists is in the minds of those that believe it. So if you expect it, you're creating it, and we create our own reality. I don't believe in that type of eternal punishment thing. I really don't. I mean, I think there is karma, law of cause and effect. I so totally don't believe something like, taking somebody that had a saintly life but didn't have the religious system that the person that's judging them has, and then thinking they're going to go into hell because they had the wrong philosophy, said the wrong words, did the wrong acts as far as, properly baptized or whatever you want to look at it. I think that's really ridiculous, honestly. It's all about, where is our heart at? Are we trying to make the world a better place? That's pretty simple too. Do we care about others? And are we trying to make things better, or quite the opposite? Are we, doing the opposite? Are we spreading more of all the negative tendencies that we see? Things that we associate with the asuras or the demonic tendencies. Or we could just look at the leadership, the behind the scenes leadership of this world that doesn't care about the poisoning of the planet, poisoning of all the people on it as well.
I'm looking in the chat, and this is what I mean about the love spreading. It's like it's kind of like wildfire, and once it starts going through the chat, you guys just, I don't know, you make it grow, and it's really beautiful. And I think one of the things that needs to be talked about when it comes to dealing with anxiety, fear, the lower energies is if you've been through trauma, and if you're an empath, well, most of you in here have been through trauma of some kind, you don't understand where the anxiety and the fear is coming from. And even though you want to be a loving being, bliss is the highest vibration, not love.
Experience that.
And that's, wow. Yeah.
Cindy regularly experiences the divine bliss. So one of the interesting things between her and I is that we both feel that there were higher sources, higher powers, devas, that were guiding us to each other. And when we talked about our experiences, we found out that, we had the same Devic influence come into our life at the exact same time. And there's a bliss that comes, from the love that you feel from some of these higher beings in the angelic realm.
Yeah, 619 turbine bliss. Yeah, absolutely. There is a bliss that I feel, and I haven't really been able to figure out exactly what it is. I do believe it's the energy of Lakshmi. I do believe it's pure love. And there is nothing on the planet that can upset me. I mean, it might sound horrible, but I could probably hear that my house caught on fire if I was out shopping, and I would feel nothing but love and bliss. And it's so hard to explain. I can't wrap my head around it. I don't know why exactly it happens, but I do believe it is the energy of Lakshmi. And she did come into my life, mine and Michael's life. We didn't know each other at the time. But a few years later, we are together. And I do believe she had a lot to do with that.
There's a lot of synchronicities that happen. So this is just fascinating stuff that we're looking at, and there's so much more to go into with it as well. And upcoming, we're going to talk more about inner earth. That's another thing. I'm going to be doing a video also going deeper into exactly how much they know, and when I say they, I mean the powers that be here on this world, about exactly what a human can do, as far as, ESP, paranormal ability, things like that. We have so much ability, and we can become so much more than what we think we are. And yes, Fred, it's the knowing that you are unconditionally loved. It's beautiful. And we love you, Fred. You're a wonderful person, been a great addition to the family. So, it's like if you talk about like these beings, the devas, for example, it's not that you're necessarily worshiping them. It's just a case of knowing beings that are benevolent. And you could ask for their help in some things. You could ask for guidance.
You can. And I think one thing that's been kept from us is the ability to know who these beings are, what these energies are from, and knowing that we can ask for guidance in different directions, all kinds of directions. And I've found, most importantly with myself, me personally, if I go straight to higher self, and I seem to get a lot of energy from that, even though I do believe Lakshmi is strongly in my life because I do feel her energy. I do feel her love. I do feel her guidance. I think it is important to go to higher self. And who knows, maybe that is her energy. I don't know. It's just beautiful.
So Vereen says we're leading people down the wrong path. What is the right path, Vereen? What is the right path? We got a lot of them coming out now. Repent and be baptized. So, there's a lot of conditioning that is obviously taking effect, but, sadly, it is the majority of people still. So, Vereen, where is your evidence? See, it's what you've been taught. Now, what do you think Jesus would have a problem with Krishna? I don't. Do you think Jesus would have a problem with Buddha? No. I think they're all working on the same team. There's benevolent beings, and then there's some malevolent ones. So, it's just basically the indoctrination and brainwashing where we can't see past our own worldview, what we've been taught and everything. And it's fear-based, because you're taught you're born a sinner. You're born into sin. Just because you were born, you basically don't deserve to live. Just because you were born, you should be thrown in hell for all eternity. But you believe it's in the blood of Christ. It's not Christ's blood. Blood sacrifices are something of the dark side. It's the teachings. You have to look deeper. And you should look at other sources. Try to find the good in other people and other ways.
I know that's what I do. I used to believe that the Bible was the only book, and I had to look within that book, and I couldn't look outside of that book, or I was a sinner. I couldn't figure out. I thought I was a bad person every time I walked into church, but it come to find out I'm not a bad person. It's just, it must be in my past lives, in my genealogy. I happen to just love astrology. I happen to love tarot. I happen to love all these things, and I'm not a bad person for it. But the church really kept me from exploring who I was, and it almost kept me from being healed by you.
Yeah, totally. And I honestly, so many times I've thought about doing a video, and really, to me, one of the biggest evils in this world is fundamentalism. Fundamentalism leads to death and destruction. It leads to separation. It leads to just exactly what we have. So if we go down these roads where we think our way is the only way, the only person we are deceiving is ourselves. Look at the situation of the world. And it's the fundamentalists in the world that are the ones that are ready to strap on a suicide vest and go run and blow themselves up in a bunch of people that are totally innocent. Fundamentalism is completely at odds with progress. And with understanding that, we have more in common. So look into the history of your beliefs. Look into how they were formulated. Who's the founder of the Catholic Church? Well, Constantine. He had his wife and son murdered. He developed this and this line of thinking in order to control a people, which worked. And, all of the other forms of Christianity that we have modern day come out of that. But a lot of people just, really the ones that seem to be the most vocal, they haven't probably even read from cover to cover the Bible. They haven't read the Pseudepigrapha. They haven't gone into the Nag Hammadi. They haven't studied the Dead Sea Scrolls. They haven't, read the Tao Te Ching, the I Ching. They haven't gone and studied so many other things. They just listen to somebody on Sunday maybe once a month, or listen to some of the online preachers, send in $5 here and there and say an amen Jesus and think that they're good and everybody else is really screwed up. It's not the case at all. If you do some research, do some understanding, and put yourself in other people's shoes. So there's so much judging that goes on. There really is so much judging that goes on from the fundamentalists. And it's fundamentalism in any way, shape, or form. And that goes for the political spectrum too, because there's people that politically, they're going to defend every single Democrat. They're going to defend every single Republican, depending on which side you're on, and won't even look at the individual or what's going on. They'll just always only look for the evil that the other is doing. And so one mountain cat says, only through Jesus Christ. Well, what is that way? Well, it's the way of love. It's the way of compassion. It's the way of non-judgment. So if you're telling people that they're going to hell, you're judging. Can't you see that? Yeah. You are judging. No, you're not saving others, Vereen. You're not. Do you know how many people have tried to save others because they've been taught to go out and save others? And what they do is they stir conflict, and that's what you've done. You're stirring conflict. You have the right intentions, but you're creating more of a problem. And so that type of thinking in what's to come is the type of thinking that needs to be completely overcome. Because, it's the same thing with Hitler. He was looking to make things right for his people. And of course, he needed a scapegoat. And so you have your scapegoats, anybody but us. It's anybody but us. And so what you're doing is you're putting people into other camps. You're separating. You're not uniting. You're not saving the earth. You're not saving souls. It's creating division. And that's what's gone on for thousands of years and still going on. Exactly. If you actually read the Old Testament, you would have a clue, but you obviously haven't. I'm not deceiving. I'm honest and out in the open. Totally. And I've covered it in a lot of videos. And, gone deep into this. And we can go deeper into this. We could find some amazing quotes out of the Bible that will blow your mind. And again, Jesus never really existed as Jesus, that's for sure. Yesu, and even Yeshua, Yeshua is Joshua. So there's a lot of ways we could look into this. But, we got to stand up against this radicalism. It's complete radicalism, and it's separating humanity. So, Adam and Eve's story is so basic. Do you understand that all that comes from the older Sumerian texts? They're all 2,000 years older than the Bible. The Bible is Cliff Notes. It's taken from many different sources. Do you know that, the earliest written pieces, the earliest written whole books we have of the Old Testament are at the very oldest, only 200 BC. So there's Gnostic texts, there's Hindu texts that far predate, as well as so many others that just totally, do you know what that means? That's the Ida and the Pingala. That's your Kundalini, Vereen. The medical symbol is your Kundalini, and I've said that a million times. It's the Ida, the Pingala, and the Sushumna. So when your energies, your masculine and feminine energies are balanced, and when you open your chakras, the Kundalini energy rises from the base of the spine, it illuminates the third eye point. And you can actually achieve some of these powers that these devas have, the cities, the superhuman powers. It's okay, Kimmy. No, see, this is the thing. We need to stand up more now. And we need to call it for what it is. And now, I don't know if Vereen's having a bad night or, we know what's going on for sure. And most definitely the the ones that run the show, there's a lot of truth in all the evil we hear about them. We talk about Epstein, and so much people were talking about Adreno. You know what the other part is. That's all real. That is, all unfortunately very, very real. Doesn't mean it's Satan, but Satan means adversary. Satan doesn't mean a guy with horns and a pitchfork. That's the problem. The people that are the most vocal, they haven't read anything. They haven't studied anything. They just basically are just going along with what they've been told. And that's why soldiers go off to war without questioning things. And that's why people kill each other without questioning things. And that's the part of this whole system that we have to wake up the masses to, so they can start to actually think for themselves again. Most of our EEA family here, they're people that have gone through all this already. They've already thought all this through. And so, we're going to say goodbye to Vereen, so we don't, we wish her well, and bye-bye. So, because what we can't do is give it too much energy. And it's just sad but true. But that's how they keep us divided. Satan is the opponent, basically, as Fred says. It's the opposition.
Yeah, and there's so many things that Michael has done to help wake me up. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't understand the Kundalini energy. I wouldn't understand what's happening to me. I would probably be in a hospital, because some of these feelings and emotions that we have during a Kundalini awakening can be quite traumatizing. And I'm a huge believer in plant medicine, and I would never have understood had I not gone outside the Bible of what was happening to me. So that's why I just think that the Bible is a way of keeping people in fear, keeping us away from other alternatives, other ways to help each other. It's really important that we lean on each other and that we share information without fear. And before I started listening to some of the truth channels, I wasn't able to look outside the Bible to find things to help myself. I just thought I was bad, and that's no way to live. It was a life of fear. I don't think anybody should live that way.
Yeah, most definitely. And many people are catching that. It's all about fear. So, think of that whole belief set. It's never made any sense to me that because we were born, we deserve to go to hell forever. To be tortured forever because of original sin, because of Adam and Eve, who, in my opinion, never existed. Not in that sense, not in that shape. It wasn't a literal apple. Obviously these are children's stories, they're also allusions to different realities. But many people, they have the mentality of children. They're so easily manipulated. And as we were saying, and all the guys going off to war, and gals thinking they're doing something right, and they're not. And all they're doing is damaging their souls because of the system. And of course it's played up to be, be proud, go serve your country, go take over the resources of another poor country, because that's really what's going on. And do you think we choose our parents? I do, D. Murphy, I do think so. I think we choose our situations, most definitely. Wildcat Warrior says, you are lost and need Jesus. Well, Jesus is a beautiful teacher, and I feel like he's worked through me. I think the people that are lost are the ones that think that they know exactly everything, and they don't,
Yeah, Jesus said, don't judge, yet, a lot of people who believe in Jesus are judging that we're not being Jesus enough. Right.
If you look for something that's non-canonical as far as, real hard proof that he really lived, you'd be hard pressed to find it, because there really isn't anything as far out there that's not non-canonical. Then when we look at the dating of the scriptures, They will try to say that the oldest of the Gospels dates from around 65 AD, but even that could be off. And so you're looking at about 30 to 35 years after he supposedly died. So there most assuredly have been wonderful teachers and wonderful beings that come in and I think do try to restore balance and righteousness. But what happens is the dark side comes and grabs their teachings and twists them, manipulates them so that they'll make sure that we're always at each other's throats. So, those people that are jumping on the fundamentalist bandwagon, they're people that are in the matrix. They have not woke up yet. They are not awake. They don't see the bigger picture, unfortunately. And they tend to judge everybody else, but that makes them feel good, unfortunately. It kind of gives them a sense of, I'm above, I'm going to be okay, you all are going to hell. It's, it's that little kid mentality of wanting to see your brother punished or, not me, he's getting spanked. It's exactly that type of energy, which it's time for us to get way past that. And, Swiftbird says, I think the Bible is effective for those who are morally bankrupt. I just want people to read it cover to cover and then go read some other texts too, as well. Because if you read it cover to cover, there's a lot of stuff in there that's extremely questionable, to say the least. And so it's the Christ energy. It's the exemplary behavior. It's that unconditional love. That's what's important, most definitely. So if we're just, relying on somebody shedding their blood 2,000 years ago and just hoping that'll do it, well, look at the condition of the world right now. Has it made a difference? Has it? How about the Inquisition? How about what happened to all the Native Americans and even South Americans too? For that Christianity came in to save souls, but really was all about filling the gold coffers. And of course, we have the witch hunts. Look what happened to the Knights Templar, and again, it just goes on and on and on and on. The killing in the name of God has probably surpassed almost any other reason.
No, it's true. Killing in the name of a God, which is really sad, when I think the best thing to do is to follow your own heart. And that's how I was able to wake up, was following my own heart and listening to my heart and saying, hey, this doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. But look over here. Now, this makes sense. And that's exactly how I did it. And that's how I ended up here. But I had to be brutally honest with myself, which was really hard because that meant I had to go against everything that I was taught for so many years.
Yeah. And as I shared with you guys, it was going to 2 Bible studies a week, every week, and to a 3-hour church service every Sunday. That got me to the point where I studied it every single night, inside and out, completely. And then as I came up with my own questions, and the church elders didn't have anything to say except for, well, it's a mystery of God, my son. You just must take it on faith. No, I won't. I'm going to look deeper than that. And it just became obvious to me. And then when I started to do some comparisons and, I said, okay, well, let me read everything I get my hands on that's not in the Bible, that could have been in the Bible, but they decided not to put it in there. So, that started to open up my eyes a lot more as well. So, we've been deceived, and that is the big deception. That's one of the biggest deceptions in this world. If you go back to 1871, Albert Pike, 3 world wars, and the last one is Christianity against Islam, and it's all basically orchestrated. It's been orchestrated for the longest time. It's all part of their game plan, and that's how they keep us divided. Doesn't mean that there isn't a source, a true God, of all things, not at all, but just simply the fact that what we've been given is all about creating divisiveness and not unity, and it works. Look at how disruptive they were in the chat room. This chat room is bliss compared to most chat rooms out there. Bliss, because you guys are beautiful. But we have some people that can't let go. They really can't. And, they're the ones too that if they were part of the crowd, I guarantee you they'd be cheering on Burn the Witch. Guarantee you. Do you not think that they would be saying Burn the Witch if we were back in Salem in the witch trials? That type of thinking is so dangerous. It is just so dangerous. So that is exactly what needs to be overcome if we are ever, ever, ever going to have, unity and peace in this world. And so one of the best things that could happen is have these beings come back and land flat on the planet. And that would be one of the best things in so many ways. And so, one of the ones I'm going to be doing upcoming is who created the Anunnaki. That's another thought. So they created us. Who created them?
Yeah, and if you guys have questions or anything, you kind of want us to cover, email us. Let us know. We sit here, we'll read the emails in the morning. And this, even though this was kind of spontaneous, and inspirational, I don't know, we could do this every night. This is just a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, I love this stuff. I thrive on this stuff because it freed me. It freed my soul. It freed my brain. Now I can be who I am, and I don't have to be ashamed of it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with telling other people, it's good to wake up. It's good to look outside the box. Don't be afraid. You're not bad. You're not going to hell, and everything is fine. And it's probably, no, I know it's a lot healthier to believe what you want to believe instead of being strapped down. I think that causes disease, which causes, all kinds of other issues to the body. If you can't be who you are, you suffer.
Most definitely. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. Much love and light to you guys. And let us pray for those that are caught up in this, mindset of divisiveness and judgment. May they see the light and be able to let it go from their hearts, because all they're doing is pulling themselves down, 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 down. And that's exactly the energies we have to let go of if we're going to progress together and progress upwards. It's one of the big imperatives in this world. So thank you guys for your support. And again, if anybody's so inclined, join us on Patreon. Help support the channel there and see some videos that don't come up on YouTube or on Ko-Fi as well. So my friends, stay safe out there. Keep your heads up. Enjoy yourselves. Live every day as if it's your last, in the sense of living it to its absolute fullest.
I second that, and I love you guys. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.